The crash had been terrible. Smoke filled the air, alarms blared, and the smell of burning metal and alien chemicals hung heavy in the research station. No one had expected the ship to survive re-entry, let alone the young alien girl who had been aboard. The scientists stared at the twisted wreckage, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that almost nothing of her had survived. Only a single hand remained. The rest of her body was gone, scattered in fragments beyond repair. Dr. Alan Richter, a human engineer with sharp eyes and a steady voice, knelt beside the preserved hand, examining the delicate bones and soft tissue with intense focus. "It's possible," he said quietly, mostly to himself. "It's difficult, but we can try." Others around him exchanged doubtful looks. Rebuilding a body from a single hand was unheard of, almost impossible. "We're playing God," one of the younger scientists whispered. She's not even alive anymore." But Alan shook his head. "Her consciousness hasn't left. The hand still shows neural activity. If we act now, if we rebuild carefully, she can survive." While debates raged, the station's janitor, Mark, moved quietly along the corridor. He had always been unnoticed, a shadow among the busy scientists. He cleaned floors, repaired small malfunctions, and fixed broken equipment, rarely asking for attention. Tonight, he had come in late, the station almost empty, carrying his mop and a small toolbox. The sounds of alarms and machinery made the station feel alive and dangerous at the same time. He passed the lab where the alien hand was kept, peeking through the glass. Alan was there, speaking softly to his team, gesturing to the hand, as if it were already a child waiting to speak. Mark had seen strange things in his life. Engineers working on experimental machines, scientists tinkering with alien technology. But nothing like this. "Do you really think it can work?" Mark asked quietly, stepping inside without permission. His presence startled no one. The scientists were too focused on their work. Alan looked at him and shrugged. "We have to try. The girl's life is in that hand. If the nanobots can reconstruct her, she could wake up. We don't know what she'll remember or how she'll react, but it's our only chance." Mark nodded, staring at the delicate hand lying on the table. It was so small, so fragile, and yet it carried life, intelligence, and hope. He didn't understand how a body could be rebuilt from so little, but he felt something stir inside him, a quiet determination to help. The process began. Nanobots, tiny machines smaller than a grain of dust, swarmed around the hand, moving with precision. They constructed tissue, bone, and muscle, layer by layer, following the design coded by Alan and his team. Hours passed. Mark stayed near the lab, keeping watch, quietly cleaning and occasionally offering small tools to Alan without being asked. Finally, the girl's eyes opened. They were large, glowing softly with an otherworldly light, filled with confusion, fear, and the faintest spark of curiosity. She could not speak. She could not move well. Every motion was uncoordinated, jerky, like a newborn learning to breathe. The first face she saw was not a scientist, not Alan, but Mark. He had bent down near her, careful not to frighten her, his own face calm, quiet, and gentle. He had washed his hands, cleaned the tools, and now knelt before her, offering a small smile. The girl's hand twitched. She reached out instinctively, not knowing why, only aware of the warm presence of the human in front of her. Mark froze for a moment, uncertain, then placed his hand lightly on the table, letting hers brush against his. The connection was simple, unspoken, yet profound. Alan watched silently. "She's responding," he said, almost in disbelief. "She knows you're not a threat." The girl blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of everything. Her mind was a jumble of memories, feelings, and sensations that didn't belong together. She remembered a bright sky, her home world, the faces of people she loved. But the images were fragmented, slipping away as quickly as they came. She felt fear, pain, and the strange sensation of being incomplete. Her body was new, but her mind carried echoes of who she had been. Mark stayed close, speaking softly, not using words she could understand yet, just tone and gestures. He pointed to the floor, then to the chair, showing her she could move, could explore. She tried to mimic him, unsteady, collapsing to the floor, then laughing quietly at herself when she realized she could sit. Her laughter was a sound no one had expected, a mixture of curiosity and relief. The bond grew in silence. Mark fed her small pieces of synthetic food, helped her stand, and guided her hands to touch the smooth surfaces of the lab. She was learning the shape of the world, the feel of gravity, and the warmth of another being who cared for her. Every small success, every new sensation, strengthened the trust between them. But not everything in the station was safe. The reconstruction process had attracted attention. Some factions within the station wanted to capture the girl, to study her body, her mind, and the alien technology embedded in her cells. They saw her as a weapon, not a living being. Alan knew this, and he knew the girl's only protection was the unlikely guardian beside her. One night, the alarms sounded again. A group of intruders had entered, their faces hidden behind masks, their intentions clear. The girl froze, her instincts raw, her new body unsure. Mark stepped in front of her, raising his hand. He was not armed with weapons, only courage and a determination that startled even the intruders. "Stay back!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the lab. The intruders hesitated, confused by the human's sudden bravery. The girl watched, wide-eyed, as someone so ordinary moved with strength born not of power but of care. She realized in that moment that humans could be more than observers. They could be protectors, friends, even heroes. The intruders retreated, and Alan finally arrived, panting. "Good work," he said, surprised at Mark's calm courage. The girl's eyes lingered on Mark, and something unspoken passed between them, a bond deeper than words, stronger than fear. Days turned into weeks. The girl began to explore the station more fully, walking, running, and testing her abilities. She discovered she had strength beyond human limits, agility, and even the ability to sense energy fields within the station. Mark guided her, always patient, always encouraging. She began to call him by a sound she made, a soft, musical noise that Mark interpreted as her first word for him. He smiled and nodded, understanding that this was the beginning of communication, of friendship, and of trust. Despite her progress, she was still haunted by fragments of her past. She remembered flashes of a family, a home, and a world she might never return to. Sometimes, she would stand by the observation window, staring at the stars, her small hands pressed against the glass, wondering if anyone else had survived. Mark would join her, standing quietly beside her, offering silent comfort. Alan and the other scientists continued their work, perfecting the girl's body, ensuring she could survive, thrive, and adapt to her new form. But it was Mark who taught her about humanity, not through experiments or tests, but through patience, kindness, and shared experience. He showed her that humans were capable of compassion, bravery, and connection in ways no machine could replicate. One night, after another long day of learning and discovery, the girl sat beside Mark, her glowing eyes watching him clean the lab. She reached out, touching his hand lightly, and for the first time, her gaze held recognition, trust, and a spark of something deeper. Mark understood without words. He had become her first human friend, the one who had shown her safety, kindness, and the strange, comforting presence of someone who cared for her simply because she existed. As she drifted to sleep in the small containment room designed for her, her body fully reconstructed but her mind still fragile. She dreamed not of her lost home or the crash that had nearly killed her, but of the human who had been there when no one else could. In the quiet hum of the research station, two beings from different worlds shared a simple truth. Connection, trust, and courage could overcome even the greatest odds. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant, but inside, life had begun anew. A human janitor and a reconstructed alien girl were forming a bond that neither science nor fate could fully explain. And in that bond, something remarkable was taking shape. A story of hope, bravery, and the first step toward understanding between two very different worlds. The future was uncertain. Intruders could return. The girl's memories could overwhelm her, and the challenges of her new existence were only beginning. Yet in that moment, all that mattered was the trust between them, the gentle strength of a human who had become her protector, and the quiet resilience of a girl who had risen from almost nothing to see the first face that welcomed her into life. The alien girl had grown stronger with each passing day. Her movements became more graceful, her body more coordinated, and her senses sharper than any human's. Yet despite the physical improvements, her mind remained fragile. Memories of her homeworld flickered in and out, like stars appearing and disappearing in a night sky. Some memories were joyful, a bright sky, laughter, and the warmth of family. Others were terrifying, the crash, the screams, the sudden loss of her world. Mark stayed close, never leaving her side. He had become more than a janitor to the station. He was her guide, her protector, and the first true friend she had ever known. He taught her how to navigate the station's corridors, how to use the simple technology around her, and most importantly, how to trust again. The alien girl watched him with wonder. He seemed so ordinary, yet he possessed a courage that amazed her. When danger arose, he never hesitated. When she faltered, he never judged. One evening, as the station floated silently above a distant planet, alarms blared. The alien girl's glowing eyes snapped open. Mark was already moving, his body tense, ready for anything. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice steady but urgent. She nodded, gripping his hand as they ran toward the lab. A group of intruders had returned. Their suits were black, their intentions clear. They wanted her. They moved quickly, using advanced equipment to try and trap her, but the alien girl was no longer weak. She dodged, ducked, and leaped with incredible speed, guided by instincts and her growing understanding of her body. Mark followed, shielding her, blocking the intruders whenever he could. The lab became a maze of flashing lights, overturned tables, and shattered equipment. The girl's glowing hands emitted faint energy pulses, disorienting the intruders for moments that felt like lifetimes. Mark realized that her body had abilities beyond human comprehension, but he also saw the fear in her eyes. She was powerful, yes, but she was still learning, still vulnerable. "Focus on me," he shouted. "Follow my movements, trust me." And she did. Together they moved through the chaos, weaving between machinery and using the station's layout to their advantage. When one intruder lunged at her, Mark intercepted, pushing the man back just enough for the girl to escape. She realized, in that split second, that humans were not just creatures of logic or weakness. They could be brave, clever, and protective in ways that even advanced technology could not match. After the intruders were forced to retreat, Alan arrived, panting, eyes wide. "You did it," he said to Mark, disbelief and admiration mixed in his voice. "I didn't think anyone could protect her like that." The alien girl turned to Mark, her glowing eyes reflecting relief, gratitude, and something deeper. She reached out, brushing his hand again, and this time she made a sound, a melodic tone that seemed to carry meaning. Mark smiled, understanding that this was her way of expressing thanks, trust, and perhaps even something like friendship. Days passed, and the girl continued to explore her body's abilities. She discovered that she could sense energy fields, detect vibrations in the station, and even manipulate small amounts of matter with her glowing hands. But she also learned about human emotions, kindness, patience, courage, and the strange bonds that connected people. She realized that humans were not only capable of great technology, but also of great heart. Mark helped her navigate these discoveries. He showed her how to control her strength, how to remain calm under pressure, and how to interact with humans without fear. He never treated her as an experiment or a curiosity. He treated her as a being with feelings, thoughts, and value beyond her abilities. The girl began to understand that this simple human who cleaned floors and repaired equipment was extraordinary in his own way. One night, the girl approached Mark while he was organizing tools in the lab. Her glowing eyes held a question, one she could not yet form in words. She touched his hand lightly, then pointed to the stars outside the observation window. Mark understood immediately. She was asking about the world beyond the station, about life outside the metal walls and flashing lights. He knelt beside her, pointing out distant planets, explaining what each one might hold. He spoke of exploration, of the potential for new friends, and the importance of courage. The girl listened, fascinated. She realized that humans, though fragile in some ways, had a strength that came from their curiosity, resilience, and compassion. Weeks later, the intruders returned, this time more prepared and more dangerous. They breached the station's perimeter with advanced weapons and drones, intent on capturing the alien girl. But she was ready. She and Mark had trained, planned, and learned to work together. The battle was intense. The alien girl moved with speed and precision, using her energy pulses to disable drones and confuse attackers. Mark used his knowledge of the station to create traps and barriers, guiding her movements and protecting her from harm. Every attack, every strategy, every heartbeat was a test of trust between them. At one point, a drone approached from behind, and the girl froze. Mark shouted, "Move!" and pushed her to the side. The drone exploded against the wall, and she realized in that moment how much she relied on this human beside her. Not just for protection, but for guidance, for companionship, for the bond that had grown stronger than fear itself. After the intruders were defeated once more, Alan approached, awe in his voice. "I don't know how you did it," he said, looking between the girl and Mark. "She's incredible, but you saved her." The alien girl turned to Mark, and for the first time, she spoke, sort of. A series of melodic sounds flowed from her mouth, unintelligible to human ears, but filled with meaning. Mark smiled, realizing that this was her first attempt at communication beyond gestures. He responded with words, simple and patient, teaching her slowly, day by day, how to speak, how to form sentences, how to share thoughts. As the days turned into weeks, the girl learned more about humans, about their kindness, bravery, and ingenuity. She discovered laughter, curiosity, and the joy of small victories. She learned about loyalty, friendship, and the quiet heroism found in ordinary actions. And through it all, Mark was there, guiding, protecting, teaching, and caring without expecting anything in return. One quiet evening, the girl and Mark sat together by the observation window looking at the stars. She touched his hand, and this time, the gesture carried more than trust or gratitude. It carried recognition of the bond they shared, of the understanding that had grown between two beings from entirely different worlds. "Mark," she finally said, her voice melodic but recognizable. He turned, surprised to hear his name spoken. She repeated it, this time with more clarity. "Mark?" He smiled, feeling a warmth he had never experienced before. "Yes," he said softly. "I'm here." The alien girl's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, and she made another sound, softer this time, as if she were laughing. Mark understood. She was happy. She was safe. And for the first time since the crash, She felt like she belonged somewhere. Outside, the stars continued to shine cold and distant, but inside the station, life had taken root. A human janitor and an alien girl, rebuilt from nothing, had formed a bond stronger than fear, stronger than technology, stronger than the unknown itself. They had faced danger, learned from one another, and discovered something far more powerful than any weapon: trust, courage, and the quiet strength of friendship. The future remained uncertain. The galaxy was vast and full of threats, mysteries, and adventures. But the alien girl no longer feared it alone. She had a friend, a protector, and someone who believed in her not for what she could do, but for who she was. And in that belief, she found the courage to face whatever lay ahead. For the first time, she smiled fully, without hesitation, looking at the human who had been there when no one else could. The glow of her eyes reflected not just light, but hope. Mark returned the smile, simple and genuine, knowing that their journey had only begun. In the quiet of the station, two worlds had collided and created something new, something alive, something extraordinary. And in that extraordinary bond, the galaxy's endless possibilities seemed just a little closer, a little brighter, and filled with the promise of discovery, courage, and the human heart.